Calling the hearing for the Wildfire Prevention Working Group to order. Thank you folks for being here in attendance. My name is Darius Kila, co-chair of the Wildfire Prevention Working Group.
Good morning. I'm Linda Ichiyama, co-chair of the Wildfire Prevention Working Group.
At this time, if members can introduce themselves to the public, and we'll start on our far left with Representative Amato.
Good morning. I'm Representative Therese Amato. I represent South Maui. That's Kihei, Wailea, and McKenna. Mahalo.
Aloha, Representative Natalia Hasi-Burdick, proudly representing Windward, Oahu, Kailua, Kaneohe Bay.
Aloha, Jackson Sayama, representing District 21, St. Louis Heights, Palolo, Kaimaki, Wilhelmina Rise, Maunalani Heights.
Aloha, Mahina Poipoi, representing Paia, Haiku, East Maui, Molokai, Lanai, Kaho'olawe, Molokini.
Aloha, good morning. My name is Lisa Martin. I represent Waimanalo, Kailua.
Good morning, Kirsten Kahaloa, District 6, Central and South Kona.
Hi, Corey Chan. I represent District 35, which is parts of Pearl City and Maipahu.
Aloha and good morning. My name is Cedric Gates. I represent District 45, which encompasses Waianae Coast.
Ozid Krista, District 3, South Hilo, and Central Puna.
Thank you, members. So just to let you folks know that there was a chance to register to testify. We have that list before us, and if at any point you are not registered to testify, just please let us know whether you're virtual or in person, and we'll go from there. Just want to thank the members, I think, for the work that they've done. I want to thank co-chair Linda Ichiyama, who's also the chair of Water and Land. You know, it's been a great 90 days, 60 days putting this report together, and it's a continuing, evolving document. You folks play a large part in that. As you can see, there was a lot of testimony that came in to submit for this. It's a very important issue, I think, that we're going to take up this next legislative session. So but before we start the hearing, all the working groups were kind of asked to do just a summary finding of what we were able to put together in this draft working group. So if you folks would just indulge me just for a couple of minutes, and we can talk about that. So as you know, we are the interim working group on wildfire prevention. Myself and Sherry Chiyama are the co-chairs, and there are members who could not make it as well that contributed a lot to that as well, and I just want to acknowledge their work. So there were 6 working groups chartered by the House leadership. Our charter is to identify the causes of wildfire and preventative action that may be taken to reduce the risk of wildfires throughout the state and prepare recommendations for appropriate legislative action. So our summary, Hawaii is facing a growing wildfire crisis. Significant transitions in large-scale land use over the past several decades, combined with mounting impacts of climate change, have dramatically increased the size and intensity of wildfires across the state. We are at a critical decision point. Bold action is required to address the key drivers of catastrophic fires, significantly increasing the pace and scale of land management, and improve the resilience of our most vulnerable communities. But our first finding, our call to action, wildfires are a growing threat to Hawaii. The annual area burned by wildfires in Hawaii has increased 300% between 1904 and 2022. In the decade following 2006, almost 1,000 wildfires burned an average of 20,000 acres a year statewide, with some years reaching closer to 45,000 acres. Large fires, which are greater than 1,000 acres, have occurred on all islands, and this happens multiple times a year across Hawaii. Wildfire endangers native species by destroying critical habitats, altering soil, and causing post-fire erosion that harms coral reefs and compromises our drinking water sources. Finding number 2 are causes of wildfires in Hawaii. People are the primary drivers of wildfires in Hawaii, as 99% of wildfires are caused by human ignitions. Natural causes of ignitions are rare, with lava restricted to active flows on Hawaii Island, and lightning strikes accounting for less than 0.2% of attributed wildfire causes. 75% of wildfires result from accidental ignitions, like campfires and equipment. In Hawaii, 26% of the land is invaded by non-native fire-prone grasses. Invasive grasses like the guinea grass, buffalo grass, easily ignite and regrow significantly after fires. This creates a problematic grass fire cycle, allowing non-native species to thrive with each new fire. Climate change is a warming and drying climate, along with increased El Nino events, contributing to drought conditions. Drought conditions escalate the wildfire risk, and recent research suggests a link between hydrological drought and increased susceptibility to wildfires. Oh. But finding number 3 are current challenges to wildfire prevention and response. Some challenges we found is that there's an average of $3.2 million allocated for wildfire response. Declines in active agriculture has also played a role in this. Wildfire threatens communities on former agricultural land. Hawaii lacks our building standards for wildfire prevention. Many Hawaii communities lack emergency preparedness plans, and Hawaii is the only state without a fire marshal in the United States. Finding 4, current strengths to wildfire response. Social infrastructure, we have relationships with our agencies and engaged communities ready to respond. Local and indigenous knowledge for fuel management. Science and technology fundamentals, such as high fire resolution data. And that Hawaii's unique and evolving law regarding water usage also plays a role. So some of the recommendations that has come out of the report: reducing emissions, reducing fuel loads, community engagement, protecting communities, wildfire suppression, post-fire response, and wildfire research. And our next steps: we submitted the draft report to House leadership by November 1st. Today is our public hearing on the draft report. We will meet to discuss testimony received and any changes for final report, which is likely to be done by December. We will submit the final reports to House leadership by December 15, and what comes from the working group report will draft bills and lead legislation for the 2024 session. So thank you folks for indulging us in that, and we will begin. Our first testifier, Michael Muniketo, Ulupono Initiative.
Co-Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hello, Co-Chairs Ichiyama, Kila, and members of the working group. My name is Micah Munikata from the Ulupono Initiative. Thank you for allowing us to provide comments to the group today. We appreciate all the work and effort to compile the draft report and look forward to the recommendations made in the 2024 legislature. I know you have our testimony before you. I just wanted to highlight a few things that's what we find important as we look for wildfire response. So while we support a lot of the recommendations made in the draft report, we believe that local food production and its significance to disaster response and resilience should be a central theme in the final report. We also believe the recommendations should include the prioritization of identifying and securing of federal funding that supports wildfire prevention activities. According to UHERO, nearly 40% of agricultural lands are considered fallow and can lead to unmanaged grassland fuels in absence of boots on the ground to detect and respond to fire. Active land management through agricultural production presents itself as a huge opportunity for the state in wildfire prevention. We understand that land management can be expensive and a long-term commitment, but why not commit to something we have all been talking about for many years: local food production. Reducing the cost of land management and locally produced food can and should be coupled with large-scale fire prevention costs. Incentivizing farmers' active land management to provide upkeep and maintenance of agricultural lands while also producing food for our communities can help to meet the two goals of wildfire risk reduction and increased local food production. We do want to note that it is extremely important that we as a state ensure that ag lands remain available for ag production. Developing ag land for ag use while incentivizing active production and land management is the cost-effective alternative to doing nothing. Local farmers and ranchers continue to answer the call during supply disruptions and natural disasters, and we should seek to develop and support them with consistent funding and opportunities. Regarding federal funding programs, it is essential that the state resources and capacity are in place to ensure Hawaii is able to secure significant federal dollars that are available now. There's a great example of this currently with the USDA Forest Service Community Wildfire Defense Grant as a very promising funding option for Hawaii agencies and organizations. It is a new program that has existed and recently received $200 million in grant funding as far as it being released, of a total of $1 billion. Projects in California last year totaled $93 million. Hawaii only got $400,000. There's something that's to be said here that we should be going after this federal funding that's available to really help our state agencies and departments to capture some of this money to help us with our wildfire prevention activities here at the state level. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify before the committee.
Thank you, Micah. Before you go, I just want to maybe clarify. So this is not like a traditional committee hearing. We are not going to set time limit on testifiers, but we do ask that any testimony is related to the working group report itself. And then for members, we are going to go through the entire list of testifiers, and then we will save questions for afterwards. So anybody providing testimony, if you please could stay on till the hearing is concluded, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Micah. Okay, up next, we have John Chin of Hawaii State Energy Office.
Aloha, chairs, Kila and Ichiyama, and members of the working group. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. My name is John Chin with the Hawaii State Energy Office, and we stand in our written testimony, and we'll stand by for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Up next, we have Gordon Firestein of Lani Upoko Firewise Committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, co-chairs and members of the committee. I sent in written testimony, but will just comment on a few of the points I made in the written testimony for emphasis. My name is Gordon Firestein. I am one of two co-chairs of the Lani Upoko Firewise Committee. Lani Upoko, as you may all know, is on Maui, adjacent to Lahaina. So we feel, of course, as you know, everybody does, very strongly about this topic and what might be done to improve our circumstances in the future. So focusing on the recommendations in your draft report, the first point I wanted to mention was about development of best practices regarding downed power lines and electrical power supplies during times of possible ignition. And recently, HECO and MECO released their proposed strategy for wildfire prevention going forward. And I was very disappointed to see that the last item on the list was the possibility of implementing public safety power shutoff. It seemed obvious from what they had written that they're very, very reluctant to take this step. And as they put it in the last line of that press release, that it would be a tool of last resort, not the first option. I'm not sure what capability you have or through legislation to make it a higher priority to shut off the power during high wind events, but it seems like an obvious strategy to adopt. So I wanted to point to that. Secondly, the recommendation about additional resources, incentives, policies to encourage mitigation actions. I might have missed it, but I didn't see in the draft report any discussion of the creation of large-scale green waste processing facilities. If there's something that you can do through your committee and proposed legislation to help fund or incentivize the creation of these facilities, I think this is urgently needed and a critical part of the overall strategy for dealing with wildfire prevention. If we're asking property owners to remove the vegetation on their property, they need a place to take it. Currently, I'm not aware of any place on the west side other than the recycling center in Ulupono, which is not open to commercial landscapers. And they're the ones who are dealing with the largest proportion of green waste. So we desperately need a place where we can take green waste, have it processed into compost, and have that compost made available to residents. And I'm sure there are many other places throughout the state that have that same issue. Then jumping ahead a little bit, one of the recommendations was expand the network of HEMA sirens and upgrade capacity with cameras. Yes, absolutely. Situational awareness is absolutely critical. In Laniapoco, we have created a prototype system called the Laniapoco Fire Spotting Network. It's a network of video cameras aimed at the landscape. They have pan, zoom, tilt capability. And the idea is to give residents better situational awareness when there is a fire. You see a plume of smoke. Sometimes it's difficult to tell how far away that is, what the conditions are on the ground there. Should we be preparing for evacuation? Be helpful to have better eyes on what's exactly going on. And that's what that system is designed for. It's modeled after a much more sophisticated and robust system in California, which I would urge you to take a close look at. It's called Alert Wildfire. They have literally hundreds of cameras up and down the state that are used and have been very successful in improving situational awareness when there are wildfires. Unfortunately, in our situation, our Lania fire spotting network didn't work during the Lahaina fires because we didn't have power, we didn't have connection to the internet. So we need something that's way more robust than what we can do as kind of a do-it-yourself, off-the-shelf system. The recommendation about increasing response capacity, especially by state personnel. I would add to that the consideration of authorization of more volunteer fire departments. I know these exist on the Big Island. They don't exist on Maui. And in our case, I'm not sure we need a full-blown volunteer fire department, but it would be extremely helpful to have people who have been trained and have access to equipment, something as simple as a water tanker, to be able to respond immediately in the neighborhood when there's a fire on a windy day. As you're all aware, I'm sure that, time is of the essence, and having people in the neighborhood who are able to respond to a small fire would give us a much better chance of keeping that from getting out of control. The nearest fire station is on the other side of Lahaina, so it's about 6 miles away from us. Response time can be too long under windy conditions. There is a new fire station in the works for Ulupono. That's also 4 miles away. And it would be really helpful to be able to create a small volunteer, fire response capability within the neighborhood. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and thank you again for this important work that you're doing and for the opportunity to talk with you this morning.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you for joining us today. Up next, I have Edward Jones. Not here? Okay. Up next, Rocky Mold of Hawaii Solar Energy Association, HSEA.
Aloha, co-chairs and members. My name is Rocky Mold. I'm the executive director of the Hawaii Solar Energy Association. I've provided written testimony. I'll stand on that written testimony, but just note that, distributed energy resources, rooftop solar and energy storage can play a crucial and critical role in reducing wildfire risk from electrical power lines in particular. It can also provide resilient power when the grid goes down for critical emergency services when they're needed. So going forward, I look forward to, my industry looks forward to working with the Public Utilities Commission, the Hawaii State Energy Office, the legislature, and you all to come up with, and Hawaiian Electric to come up with, plans for reducing wildfire risk in our electrical system. So distributed assets have a critical role to play. And in particular, also in rebuilding the grid of West Maui, we really should be thinking about how to utilize non-wires alternatives and distributed energy resources, rooftop solar and energy storage going forward. So I'll stand on my written testimony. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Mold. I appreciate you joining us today. Up next, I have Michael Rice.
Aloha. Michael Rice, testifying on behalf of myself. One of the things that is being said, I know this is focused mostly on fire prevention. I believe one thing that can be done to both help with prevention as well as help actually putting out the fires is the acquisition of water bombers. In particular, this one brand known as the Air Tractor Fire Boss. I don't know if I can share my screen or not, but it would overlap with prevention because one of the things they advertise is the ability for them to spray seedlings and fertilizers over areas like wildland areas to help regrow fire-resistant, grasses or help areas regrow after a fire. So, I think that would help with in addition to putting out the fire, we send them out, they skim the ocean, dump 800 gallons at a time, as opposed to the little buckets that we got now. But like I said, afterwards, we can have the DLNR doing missions with those things where they'll drop native grasses that are more fire resistant over an area as well as the fertilizers to help them grow better, or even just help alleviate drought conditions in some area by just dropping fresh water. I know we're kind of at a premium with that right now, but it would still be an option. That's all I wanted to say for the moment. I kind of did this off the cuff because it was kind of short notice. Thank you very much. I'll be available.
Thank you, Michael, for joining us. Up next, we have Melissa Pavlicek.
I'm Anthony Ching, actually, and Mel and I were here for the same coalition, so we just wanted to.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Aloha, chairs and working group members. I am Anthony Ching, speaking on behalf of a coalition of organizations, including the Nature Conservancy, Trust for Public Land, Resources Legacy Fund, and Kupu. Mahalo for the opportunity to speak today. As organizations focused on Malama Aina, we see wildfire prevention as an interconnected component of conservation. Sound conservation will generally reduce wildfire risk, and wildfire prevention includes conservation. And I want to say thank you in the draft report for your discussions about conservation actions. Significant additional funding for natural resource management is and will be central to Hawaii's ability to implement the sound recommendations of the working group's report. You have our written testimony, but what we wanted to emphasize is our request to include the following statement in the findings in the final report: that for DLNR to reduce the threat of wildfires and other environmental disasters, the state must significantly increase funding for wildfire prevention, focused conservation, and other natural resource management or restoration, either through raising revenue from visitors, other means, or a combination of the two. So in conclusion, I want to express our coalition's strong desire to collaborate with policymakers. We see important work that you're doing and want to partner with you to ensure that the support needed to make these recommendations become a reality. So, mahalo.
Thank you, Anthony. Up next, we have Henry Curtis, Life of the Land.
Aloha, co-chairs Ishiyama and Kila. I apologize, my written testimony said one of you is chair and the other is co-chair. You're both co-chairs. Welcome, committee members. Like you, I've been studying energy and fire for, it seems like, continuously over the last few months. I think your working group has come up with 42, my count 42 broad initiatives, which is a good basis for beginning thinking about what legislation is needed. I think one of the things we need to focus on is obvious short-term solutions. I was at a disaster meeting in Lahaina last week, and there is still massive dead grass right next to residential communities that have not burned. The idea that we would face a second Lahaina fire because we're not cutting back the dead grasses seems like not a good policy. We're in the grid hardening docket with the Public Utilities Commission. Ulupono is the other intervener in that proceeding. And one of the things that HECO is seeking to do is protect their lines from the risk of fire, but not the renewable energy systems that are connected to their system. So we need to also look at the grasses and vegetation around the solar and wind facilities in this state. One of the issues that has popped up a lot is PSPS, cutting off power in advance on windy days. As you may know, the National Weather Service has issued 5 red flag days since the Maui fires. Nobody has suggested cutting off power in advance, only waiting to see if there are deaths and then saying somebody should have done it. The tool of last resort, which PSPS is sometimes referred to, probably comes from the California Public Utilities Commission, which has investigated the issue for more than a decade and found that while cutting off power has very positive aspects in preventing fires, it also has enormous economic and social impacts, especially to environmental justice communities. If you were to cut off power to all communities that the National Weather Service says is vulnerable during a red flag day, you would be cutting off all power to Waianae, Kihei, Kailua Kona, Ka'u, and many other parts of the state. What we really need is for the legislature to require the Public Utilities Commission to dive into this issue and to evaluate all the options and to look at the costs and benefits and how they impact all the people of the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Wait, so Melissa, this is a double testify? No? Same? Okay. Up next, we have James Rodriguez from the Waianae Community Kupuna Council. Not present. Okay, thank you. Up next, we have Mike Morin. Not present.
Good morning, co-chairs and members of the committee. My name is Mike Moran. I'm with the Kihei Community Association. Of course, we're on South Maui. And we feel that our community is much akin to Lahaina. And we too had devastating wildfires that came very close. But we were the fortunate ones that with the work of our good firefighters, and as one firefighter told me in 2018 when the fire came right up to the edge of the homes, he said we were also blessed by Mother Nature that the wind changed, that firefighters could only do so much. So we're of course, very interested in this topic, and we, as amateurs, we commend you for coming up so quickly with this draft. Sometimes we tend to criticize ourselves here in Hawaii and say government moves so slowly. You guys moved very quickly in coming up with this extensive report. We also tried to move as quickly as we can. We had our last community meeting in September, and we were fortunate to have Elizabeth Pickett come and address our community. And I see her name repeatedly in the footnotes of your of your draft plan as someone who is as an expert that's worked in this field for years and years. So I think she, among all the others, of course, are great sources of this matter, and you have used in your draft plan. We did submit written testimony, and because we're a community association with bylaws in South Maui, we are somewhat restricted into focusing in our district. But we put in our written testimony support for the West Maui Greenway, and we were tangentially involved in that for many years when the Maui MPO had meetings on it, and they kept, the then executive director kept asking us to participate. And with the concept, the logical concept, if you support something on the other side of the island, then they in turn will support what you need too. And at that time, we were just looking at that West Maui Greenway as something that was advantageous for our multimodal transportation. Every bicyclist reduces the volume of cars. So it was on that concept that we were looking at supporting that. But we saw in this tragedy how this, if this had been completed, how many souls might have been saved who were trapped in cars, who could have been on bicycles, or even just running or walking in a safe escape route. We in South Maui have a similar situation where we basically have one route out. And I personally, I live in North Kihei, so I'm pretty close to the escape. But the further south you go, where we're constantly building more and more things, in particularly in Wailea and McKenna, those folks have many more miles to travel to get out on this one road. So we do need other escape routes. We know there's ranch roads, there's the Oprah Winfrey Road, those type of things that could be improved and only opened in an emergency. But to try and do that when the emergency is occurring, of course, is counterproductive. It's doing the things that you're trying to do here in this plan and looking ahead and saying, well, we can't fix what happened in Lahaina, but let's try and prevent it from happening in other communities like ours. And we're very pleased to see that at the top of the alphabetical list, our South Maui representative, Teresa Amato, is part of this community. And also, if I may give a shout out to a friend, Natalia, who's there representing her district on Oahu, but she has been a good friend to our community association, helping in many ways. So again, I just commend this group for doing this. We are very thankful that this is available to us statewide, that we can see what you good folks are doing aside from when you're in session, that trying to address this crucial issue. So thank you very much for the opportunity to testify. Aloha.
Thank you, and we are grateful for them as well. So up next, we have George Purdy from the Hawaii Pacific Advisor, or he's a Hawaii Pacific Advisor group member.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Chair Ichiyama and Kila, and members of the House Working Group. George Purdy with
Sorry, George, could you, is there a way you could maybe amplify your audio? We're having a hard time on this side to hear you.
Maybe just speak louder.
Maybe just speak a little louder if possible.
Speak a little louder if possible. Okay. I'm George Purdy with the Hawaii Pacific Advisory Group. My day job, I'm airport fire lieutenant, so I know these fire events very well. Our group is putting in a testimony that I stand by, and looking at your bullet points, and what two I chose from is that in the prevention part. For us as emergency responders statewide level, there's two things that we could do. One is amending Act 288, the Ahamoku bill, and adding emergency response within that section. Here in Lahaina, the moku that Ahapua showed up and showed out. And the reason why I know this works, the Lanai emergency plan, we actually use the Ahamoku as a extra manpower because we live on an island. We use all your assets on the island. And I didn't realize what I was doing when we built our plan because I'm actually the moku seat on Lanai and also play the incident commander during our emergencies. So that's one component that solves a lot of problems. And the prevention part, because Ahamoku is under DLNR, getting them proper funding. Yes, we don't have a state marshal, but now you got a whole community that can go out and actually do fire prevention efforts. So we've got manpowers built into the system, and it's bringing that Hawaiian cultural way back. Let them go out, speak with the large landowners, make friends, and come up with plans to actually access these large land masses and create the green belts around communities. The second part is the modernization of our emergency system. So Ahamoku is one part. The second part is fire intelligence, island intelligence, and this is using unmanned systems where it is air, land, and sea. Currently using these systems in a live event, a scale as large as this, we need current maps that are up to date. We as incident commanders that would be operating this event need current and up-to-date mapping, pictures, information, so we can make strategic offensive or defensive decisions. These are the things that I noticed since I've been here, looking at the system from the outside, being part of HIEMA's donation and volunteer group, seeing the things that we could fix to make our system better. And the preparedness is wildfire is still a threat until we can get these lots of rehabilitations done to the land. So the preparedness part is modernizing our emergency system on the state level, which is highways, airports, harbors, and DLNR. At the state level, having an intelligence system or an asset between all departments, especially the UAS operations coming out of airports. Because we do work with FAA, we are able to support our counterparts and their UAS programs and our commercial operators, which we will create an MOU through Airports Fire, working with all these legitimate Part 107 operators. And we could also do some sort of government and private company partnerships in purchasing the equipment. It is the interest of state assets having these tools to collect the information and data that we turn into products that we use, which is basically pictures, videos, thermal imaging, and current up-to-date maps. Because these fires are so large today, we as humans have reached the capacity to actually function in an event this large. We need technology to drive the future events to actually manage it correctly. We need to see above 360 on the ground to make good and correct decisions where the evacuation is now. We can hold off and save what we have to save. Right now, we're going into a gunfight with a pellet gun. We can't do it. We're outmanned with these natural disasters that are happening. We need to be more technologically up to date, up to speed, real-time imagery. So those are the two things that I hit for your prevention part. One was the state fire marshal. Let's just update the Ahamoku system, get them involved, because I would use them. And Lahaina is a perfect example. And I believe all across the Pai'aina, you bring the Ahamokus and the Ahapuas and the people in it, they'll come together because Lahaina showed out. That's the type of what FEMA had asked. They did not have a response plan for an island. Right now, what I'm sharing now is my vision of what an island response plan looks like. And it's not that much. If all these agencies within the state put up a few $1,000,000 each, we can cover the whole state of Hawaii. And that's my vision, seeing and knowing if it's possible, I know what we can pull it off and actually be better prepared moving forward for next fire season in the next 8 to 9 months. Other than that, that's all I got. And thank you very much, chairs.
Thank you, Mr. Purdy. Up next, we have Ted Ralston from Hawaii Pacific Advisory Group.
Good morning, Chairs Ichiyama and Kilo, and members of the Hawaii House Working Group on Wildfire Prevention. You're going to hear from me a lot of the same things you just heard from George. He's our on-the-ground man in Maui. He's currently at the CNHA conference. This is why he's not here present with us. He was here last week speaking to the Goods Distribution Committee, and we'll be speaking to all the committees, I think. So I'll just have a little different perspective and point of view on what George had said, but George is a fascinating individual. He works in the fire department and understands problem solution, and firemen are really important in these types of thinking because they want to solve problems. So I really salute George. I've known him for 15 years, and we've been happily working together. I'll just read my prepared testimony. You have it there. I think it finally got there. But we, the Hawaii Pacific Advisory Group, are organized under an NHO called Hawaii Pacific Foundation. And we always welcome the chance to brief our information to you and others as well. Took a look at your report, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but just who we are. This advisory group is a voluntary network of people from different walks of life around the state and around the nation who care about Hawaii and connect the dots in areas where the dots aren't being connected. So we don't have any authority or anything. We simply find people who have budget and who have interest and have need, and we tie it together and go make it happen. For example, the first week after the fire, we got the first overhead imagery created on all the burn zones of a resource management company. We have since done the down close UAS or drone-based detailed observation of all the burn zones, and we've also done the 360 ball camera on top of the vehicles to get a oblique view of everything. All that information is being fused at NDPTC here on Oahu to provide information prior to the debris removal and the reconstruction. So these weren't being done, so we did it. We also supplied about 100,000 of PPE that wasn't being supplied, and so we just see a hole, fill a hole, go get it done, move on to the next thing. So we take any hard ball you want to throw at us, and we'll go see what we can do. In any case, we do invite you to anybody from your team to join us. We meet 3 times a week on Zoom. We collect everybody and see what's next. The advisory group that we represent, we looked at your report, and we certainly acknowledge the points you made and the observations you came up with. What we see in the recommendations you found or you generated was that there are markers of a critical dependence, as I wrote it here, critical dependence of island safety and continuity of life, continuity of operations, continuity of society, whatever you want to continuity. The dependence of that on informed land management, we heard that several times from other speakers, on accurate hazard identification and threat identification, preventative risk mitigation, and most important, accountability. Accountability leads to command and control, leads to response, and leads to solving the problem before it occurs. Those are the things that we see are the characteristics that sit above the recommendations you've made. So what it turns to us is that how we observe those 4 factors, how we observe the land and the relationship we have to the land and how our agencies all perform is critical. The better we can observe this at an ahamoku level, the better we can respond, because these natural disasters don't care about disciplinary boundaries, they don't care about what group you belong to, they don't care about where you live, they go where they want. And so we have to think that way and protect the land in that regard. So the observation and therefore the management of the circumstances can best occur from, as George told us, from an Ahumoku Council perspective, which we thank DLNR for coming up with that several years ago. Let's push that from a social management and cultural management into an operational domain. Let's get our operations at the Moku level. And here in Hawaii, it's perfect for that because we're all dependent island situations. That information, an information-rich, Moku-based orientation and thought process will lead us to the framework that allows effective unified command when something needs to be addressed. It also leads to the unified identification of the risk in the first place. That's what ties us all together. One thing to think about also, we got to realize our military relationships. There's a lot of military installations here in Hawaii. The military is just as dependent on not burning down as we are. And if we can find a way to tie their need for security into ours, we can maybe get funding that's shared between military operations and our operations in terms of solving these common problems. So we should really pay attention to finding a way to capitalize on that. Well, how do we get there? This Hawaii Pacific Advisory Group that we are recommends that the legislature fund improvements in emergency management capability by creating system improvement projects or tasks at bill level, and we'd be glad to help you take in what you've done and turn those into whole thoughts that become bills. And in such a way, we can get to this Moku-oriented thinking process, and then that'll lead us to unified command. Unified command is really the answer to the response side of the equation here that we've not seen happening yet. So we broke that down into, I think, about 7 items here. And I'll just give the titles of them without going through all the specific details. They're in the testimony. Looking forward to talking to anybody who wants to. But item 1 is establishment of a fire and all hazards intelligence network, kind of like George was talking about, that depends on sensors, depends on communication, and doesn't shy away from incorporating new technology. AI gets a bad name. AI is good if you use it the right way. And doing the forecasting and such is really important. For example, all of our experience, all of our training, all of our equipment in response is based on 30-knot winds. You know what 30-knot winds are. Beyond 30 knots, you can't open a car door, so you can't get out, and you can't open your house door, so you can't get out. So nobody really has experience outside 30-knot winds. Okay, 80-knot winds, which we heard were blowing, have a dynamic pressure head 6 times higher than 30-knot winds. So if you can imagine 6 times the force that you experience trying to open your door on the windiest day up on a poly, imagine what that does to fire. Fire begins behaving like water. It seeks out channels. It seeks out the path of least resistance. It seeks out a whole different hammer blow function relative to the convective fire we're used to at 30 knots. It also destroys by physical force the things in its way, vegetation or houses. It generates its own kindling to push forward. Fire is a completely different animal at 80 knots versus all of our experience and training at 30. How do we get there? We're not going to go out and do not 80 knot winds anywhere. You can fall off an airplane. That's what 80 knots feels like. But we need science. We need simulation, modeling, and analysis to take us there. We need simulations to let people train. And this is where the technology can come in and really help us. So I just advertise that one. Item 2 here on our list of things that can be done is we need durable communications. We heard that earlier. If we can't get communications, we can't get the sensor output, we can't get information to people, we can't give them guidance. Right now we're dependent on terrestrial-based cell phones. We have cell phone towers which are powered by the grid. If the grid goes down or the towers burn, guess what? No comms. No comms means nobody knows what to do. And any sensors you might have placed out there don't have any way to generate feedback. So we've got to look into comms capabilities that are durable and are persistent and are available to everybody. We actually had that opportunity 5 years ago here in Hawaii. We had a Japanese company that was proposing stratospheric airplanes that would provide persistent 5G downlink to anybody with a cell phone. Don't even need a ground station, right to your cell phone. And any sensors on the ground up to the overhead. That got kind of pushed out of Hawaii. They couldn't find a way to do business here, so they went to New Mexico to do the testing, and the system is now in operation in Africa. We got to think different about how we develop business and bring that back. We need that persistent overhead communications capability for all of the islands. Adoption, another one that we haven't really talked about here, but we've got to get serious about understanding how to measure threats. There are threat measurement systems. One that I'm familiar with is called FMCEA, Fault Mode and Consequence Effects Analysis. Sounds like a lot of words. Another one is called STAMP. They both are used by the aerospace industry, the space industry and such to eliminate faults, discover faults, and then eliminate them, mitigate around them. I think they can be applied to our situation here, especially in an island environment, which is constrained physically and by access. So we have a limited function. It's much easier to think about these problems here than, say, in Nebraska or someplace where you have interstate highway supporting it. So I would say that one of the things we should be developing is a way to get good and get scientific about understanding how to measure faults. And then if you measure them, you can deal with them or you can ignore them, but you know what they are. We already talked about the unified command system as a control authority. Talk about that. Structured emergency logistics. We'll leave that out for this conversation, but it does apply to other areas we've been briefing. We of course need to always adopt faster ways to extinguish. And one of the ways to faster extinguish is to set backfires by remote systems. Get the backfire in and get the black going where the green used to be and shut down the fire by that type of expedient. So there's many ways to think about rapid extinction of fires. In fact, there's a X-Tech prize solicitation going on right now. I think Elon Musk put it out. He's asked, hey, give me ideas that'll get me wildfires shut down in 10 minutes from discovery. So actually we're gonna go and do some thinking on that. And last, we've got to always incorporate island intelligence. The federal stuff comes at us. It's got to be reshaped to fit our orientation here, our thought process, and our society. So we thank you for the chance to once again speak to a group here. We'll be speaking to all of them. Looking forward to working with you. Love to help you on legislation and take any questions and throw us a hardball.
Thank you, Ted. Our last registered testifier, Sandy Wong of Hawaii Solar Energy Association.
Good morning, Co-Chair Keela, Co-Chair Ichiyama, members of the working group. My name is Sandy Wong. I'm here for Hawaii Solar Energy Association. You heard from Rocky Mo today, so I just wanted to piggyback on his testimony. We read your report. It talked about undergrounding electrical lines. We think that's a good idea, but it can be very expensive. And so what we want you to consider to add to your toolbox is microgrids and distributed energy resources. Some of you may not know what microgrids are or DER, distributed energy resources are. So I did give Co-Chair Ichiyama some cheat sheets on them. So you can ask her, or you have my email address, and you can email me, and I can give you the references, and I would be happy to talk to you. I'm aging myself here, but I am an attorney that practices before the PUC, and so I have been doing this for 30 years, so I do know a little about it, although Rocky really is the expert. So please consider it in your toolbox, and we think it is very effective, it's economical, and it will help for resiliency. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Sandy. We'll distribute your materials to the committee members.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go to members' questions, anyone in the room not registered to testify that would like to testify, please come forward now. Thank you. Yes, sir. And if you can just state your name and if you're testifying on behalf of an organization for the record, please. No. You're good. Oh, okay.
Mr. Keela?
Yes.
I signed up to testify. You never got my...
No, but I don't have it on here, but if you could just state your name and then your organization for the record, please. Oh, yes, we got it this morning. Sorry, you're not on the list, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name's Manuel, WMD Kuloloyo. My last name is supposed to be Kuloloya, but my grandfather didn't sign his name in cursive, bring the loop down for the A. So Kuloloya is my real name. Gave my two children Kuloloya. Kulaloya, Sea of Kulaloya is now known as Honolulu Harbor. The House of Kulaloya, the Stone House of Kulaloya, is where the royal children were comfortably resided in Waine'e, Lahaina, Maui. The American consulate was situated at Kulaloya, Waine'e, Lahaina, Maui. Mr. Curtis, you always inspired me as a young man. Nice to see you again. Mr. Ralston, haven't seen you since 9/11. How are you? You still get your cell phone 562 or 714? Huh? 808. You retired from Boeing? I did, yeah. Nice to see you. You from Waianae?
Yes.
Your family is famous for civil defense. You know that? You know that?
Thank you.
Who's from Waianae over here?
Representative Yates is from Waianae as well.
Who's from Maui over here? What district you from?
Kulakai.
Kulakai. I just came from Kula Elementary School last night. You know what they had over there last night?
They had a wildfire meeting.
Exactly. You should have been there. Ooh. That's one reason you don't want to have a fire. So you're wondering, what am I going to say? You're exactly right, Mr. Curtis. There were 42 bullets under 7 items, pages 8 through 10. How many of you saw the show Maverick? Maverick, how many of you saw the show? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. No shame. No shame. I want to watch them. None of you ain't watch Maverick. Tom Cruise. Yeah? What these gentlemen are trying to say is, I'm a quality assurance manager for the United States Navy. My grandma's house was the headquarters for the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana in Kahului, Maui. Doesn't that sound like, what the heck? How you, Uncle Ron? How you, sir? How you doing? You see this right here? It's called knowledge transfer. In the business of quality assurance, they call it the transfer of knowledge. So the young bucks, they will go bust up Tom Cruise, yeah? When Tom Cruise shows up at the hangar, what does he do? He grabs the manual, yeah, for the fighter pilots, and he goes, it's the man. Okay? How many of you live in Mililani Moka? Wait, let me ask the Nature Conservancy guy. Is the fire out, sir?
If you can just direct your remarks
No,
to the
Ms.
committee.
Ichiyama. Is the fire out today? Yes. Today is 14, 16, 17, 18. We're on day 19. Right? Ms. Ichiyama? We're on day 19. Any of you concerned about that? Where's the lessons learned from Lahaina? All that you wrote, we should already be doing. How many of you been to Lahaina, by the way? Raise your hand. More than once. Twice. 3 times. Brother, how did it feel when you went in there? How did it make you feel?
Hurt.
Huh?
Hurt.
You go from super mad, you gotta come back, be happy, get super mad and piss off. Mr. Ralston, I met him because I was the County of Maui advisor for the State Civil Defense Advisory Council, now known as HAIMA, from 9/11 to APEC. Approved by the State Senate. Ms. Ichiyama. I get business. Plus, I heard 2 guys say Ahamoku. You want to know who's the Kaho'olawe Island rep for the Ahamoku, Mr. Ralston? Me. Mr. Kila, you know what every one of you can do now? How many of you will listen on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock for for the Honolulu Fire Department aviation crew did a briefing about the Mililani fire for the safety committee of the Honolulu City Council. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Please go look at it. They gave you a reality check of what's going on Oahu and about jurisdictional disputes. Sounds familiar? How many of you from Kauai? I wonder if Ken Diatilio is still flying. I don't think so. How many of you from Big Island? You know the guys from Paradise Helicopters? Yeah? DOFA, Department of Forestry and Wildlife. That's what you said, right, sir? DOFA. That's your only state agency that contracts out for a helicopter every year. You know that? I'm not scolding, Ms. Ichiyama. Lahaina was a man-made disaster. It's man-made. And it pisses me off. Should have never happened, Mr. Ralston. But Mr. Garcia, you tell Uncle Ed as an appropriator, this is what we're going to do. And I need you guys' help. Expedite, Mr. Keeler. Expedite. You cannot have 80 to 100 gallon buckets of Bambi buckets on a HFD Notar or a Paradise helicopter fighting a fire. All you're doing is, I'm not being vulgar, it's like you're pissing on a fire. You need an 800 gallon that can fight with a Bambi bucket for like a Sikorsky S-61 that you already have an asset, a commercial asset here on Oahu, working for the Hawaiian Electric Company. Some of you see them. The Pacific Mesa Range has 2 of them after the disaster of that crash. 2 of them, by the same company, by the way. Mr. Keeler, we gotta go outside the box. Because you've never rained in Mililani at 2 o'clock in the morning Saturday, at Monday at 10 o'clock, and Tuesday all day, that fire in Mililani would buckle loose. And anybody here from Oahu Civil Defense? Absent. The number 2 lady that was bragging, oh, I ain't gonna help Maui. I told her, you're gonna get your chance. We cannot afford another Lahaina. Every other state has a commercial fire capacity. It's the killer. That's what we need right now. Commercial. Guys that do this for a living on CONUS, they're already here in Hawaii. Did you know that, Mr. Ralston? So I'm like that guy, Tom Cruise. I look like a monk seal now, but yeah, they like for boss them up. But who's the guy when lead them through the pass? Yeah, the 2 minutes took them 37 seconds. The killer. You come from a family of state civil defense, heavy hitters, you know that. I was a vice chair. You know who was my chairman at the time? Under Generals Correa and Lee, Governors Cayetano and Lingo, with Vice Director Teixeira. The greats. And when they bring a PIO in front, it's not any rinky-dink college kid. Who's the guy from KHON? You know, that's who's the man? Uncle, what is his name? Not Joe Moore, but the other one. You bring in the heavy hitters. Any of you Filipino in here? Manang bida, you look at the man. Who you think went suffer in Lahaina? Our Filipino families. Who know like that's well. It's a generations of wealth, real property got wiped out. Gonna take another 3 more, Glenn. Excuse me, that was your kupuna's name. I'm just sharing that with you because you sit in an important position that you can help. Because why not? You guys going, you know. And if you think that you live on Hawaii Lower Ridge, that you're immune, if you only know how the mountain looks today. I say this to you in the very most humble of spirits. Yeah, we need help. And we need help now. because at the working group for schools yesterday, Konawaina says we have fire alarms 4 years not working. Isn't that embarrassing? That's egregious. That's beyond egregious. Somebody should be fired. If that was a private sector, yeah? Uncle Ted talks about HIRADC. HIRADC. Hazard Identification, Risk, and Determining Controls. They fail everything. And if you are not the oversight, then who is? When my brother Herman Andaya, my underclassman in Baldwin says, I was swearing at the TV. So I just came from the Maui Civil Defense at 5:45 this morning, and guess who was standing watch this morning? Anybody want to take a wild guess? Huh?
No one?
Uncle Darryl Oliveira, the chief, the temporary intern. So you know who was the chair, Mr. Kila, when I was the vice chair?
No.
Anybody you from Kauai? Mr. Lamosad, fire chief of Kauai himself. And then the next chair was who? Mr. Gerald Coffey, the famous Gerald Coffey, the naval aviator, U-2 spy plane dive. The guy that was a famous POW, right? Went to work at PACOM, right? PACOM, right, Uncle Nestor? So I share this with you as a young Hawaiian that was a valedictorian at Henry Prime Baldwin High School. They lived for many years at John and Marion Kelly's house at 4117 Black Point Road, called Kupiki Pikio. And T. Marion was the noted 1848 Great Mahele author. John Kelly, the famous trainer, United States Navy lead trainer for the UDT and Navy SEALs. Creator of Save Our Surf. So it's in that spirit I'm talking to you today. So if you want to bust me up, yeah? You want to bust me up, just know I won't tell you, grab these assets now, because it's coming. And we cannot afford another Lahaina. I don't think they'll ever recover. Many people, but we're going to try. Okay, Mr. Kila. You Hawaiian, I'm Hawaiian. You know what they're talking about, yeah? Local knowledge. The scientists now, they call it traditional knowledge, traditional ecological knowledge, right? Yeah? Mr. Curtis, right? So they're calling on man? Yeah. So thank you for letting me testify. Yeah? All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any other members of the public in the room that would like to testify before the committee? Seeing none, at this time, are there any members of the public online that would like to testify before the committee?
Ms. Hirata? Mailani? Hirata?
Hi, aloha. Can you folks hear me?
Yes, thank you. Can you please state your name and your organization, or if you're testifying for yourself for the record, please? Thank you.
My name is Mailani Hanapi Hirata. I'm calling in from the island of Molokai, and I am just testifying as a regular kupa aina of Molokai. So, aloha aina kako, mahalo to all of you folks who are part of this wildfire prevention working group. This is a great foundation and a great starting point for everyone. As always, Molokai, we send our aloha to the shores of Pi'ilani, to Maui Komohana and everywhere else on Maui that suffered in the wildfires, and all of our people there. So I wanted to just touch on some things. The importance of specific district data and planning, not just the geographical or environmental factors, but looking at prevention and response on a holistic spectrum. Making sure that the emergency professional and community resource capabilities or capacity, as well as our natural resources are, they're a critical part of any plan. So making sure that, we have all of that, the plans, whatever initiatives or any type of efforts, any type of mitigation, prevention and control wildfires will be most successful, I think, if we prioritize the importance of recognizing the specific differences, maybe strengths and weaknesses of individual islands and even individual districts within the islands. I am also a little bit interested in any ideas in cleanup efforts to support environmental and community health and well-being. And then just lastly, wanted to say, it's just a question, but you guys don't have to answer it, but just in your guys' process going forward, maybe thinking about in the forward thinking, what is, if any, wellness of our I-9 community after the wildfires? Like if that can be some part in here. I know this is about prevention, but just thinking about what you guys think, or if there's any focus groups or ideas about that would be great. But anyway, mahalo, that's all I wanted to say. Ahui ho.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to offer testimony? If you can raise your virtual hand. Anyone else, Sarah? No?
Seeing no other testifiers online or in the room, I'd just like to thank you folks for being here today. So at this time, I'm going to open up to members for questions, and I'm going to start on our right side, starting with Representative Todd and working your way down if anyone has questions. No questions? Yes, Representative Amato.
Thank you, co-chairs. I have a question for the person from the Ulupono initiative, if they're still available.
Mr. Munaketa, are you still online?
Yes, Representative.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for your testimony. As many people know, I'm a huge proponent of tapping federal dollars. So you mentioned about states on Kona, you mentioned Kona's tapping federal resource dollars to help fire prevention efforts, I believe. How much money do you believe Hawaii is leaving on the table by not going after these funds? Do you have an estimate?
Oh, it's a good question, Representative. Our work at Ulupono has been trying to tap into federal dollars across the board. There are various programs that exist, such as the one mentioned around the Community Wildfire Defense Grant, which specifically hit at some of the prevention aspects to this particular scenario. With $1 billion that was dedicated to the program and 200 million of it allowed, or at least released from the federal government, 93 million went to California, and we only tapped into 400,000 as a state. I think we can do better. I think that's really what that scenario and situation is. It is a new program, so hopefully we can look into programs like this moving forward. Again, this program has a lot of flexibility around what you can tap into the funding for. A lot of it could be just maintenance. The state holds a lot of land. Our government agencies hold a lot of land. So if we can maintain it through grant opportunities such as this, if we're looking at how we want to spend our state monies as well, I mean, this is a federal match that's there. And if we're looking to do this, why not tap into it? So this is just one example that we highlighted. Again, our work at Ulupono, we highlight a lot of different grant opportunities across the state in various sectors. So we do local food, renewable energy, clean transportation, and freshwater resources. So there's quite a bit. And so our stance in our testimony and really into the next session is to create the capacity within state agencies to seek, apply, and administer these types of grants, because it's quite a bit of money that we're leaving on the table. Sorry, Rep, I don't have a specific dollar amount to kind of give you, but just wanted to kind of give you some background on this.
Thank you. I'm good.
All right, thank you, Representative Amato. Any members, any other questions? Representative Poi Poi.
For Ted from Hawaii Pacific Advisory Group, I just wanted to clarify when you speak about ahamoku, if you are speaking more generally to the concept of ahamoku and the principles, or more specifically to it as it exists in the Council of DLNR, because it's also just a broader framework, and then it is also a council. So if there's a differentiation between the two.
Mr. Olson, if you can come up to the podium, that way folks on Zoom will be able to hear your response.
Well, first of all, we can really turn to Manuel for some information from him, his current perspectives and such. Okay, we got it. The idea was to get a broad perspective across a contained area, or the entire involved mass, if you will, the land and the people, in terms of how they relate to each other, rather than into governmental or jurisdictional departmental divisions, because these issues we're dealing with don't care about departmental divisions. They don't care about what agency you belong to. They are going to operate according to the flow of the pressure gradients and the land gradient and such. They're going to operate the way they want. So we have to think that way as well. So that was the idea, that DNLR has opened this up as at least as a point of getting thinking going, and why don't we take that basis and add operations to it, so it becomes an operational guide to us as well as just administrative orientation.
Okay.
If we have George Purdy on, he's been involved in it in Lahaina already, and we can get him to give some additional advice as well if he's online.
Sure. It was just in reference to the written testimony
George
as well. I
Sullivan.
think that was submitted by you.
Did you want to direct your question, Rep. Poipoi, to?
If, George, if you're still on Zoom, I just wanted clarification when we're talking about implementing ahamoku, if it's more the broader concepts of ahamoku and, you know, how traditional ahamoku practices or ahupua'a practices versus if the intention is to broaden the scope of the actual advisory committee.
Yes, it is to, after this incident, and like I said, my experience on Lanai, sitting as the MOCO, and, you know, with only 3,000 people, 2 fire stations, and 90,000 acres, you know, you use every single asset. And the knowledge that I have about the 13 ahapua'as, the people, especially the experienced folks within the community that knows the land, it helps the incident commander with that critical knowledge to make that decisions. I didn't realize I was wearing the 2 hats when we developed our plan, but when I came to Lahaina and been out there and seeing that, you know, one of our main goals within the incident command is to control chaos. Chaos ensued. And the thing was, why it ensued, the people didn't feel like they were protected. Part of being that incident commander is taking care of people. You know, you have to bring them into a unified command. You bring that MOCO in, they're going to let you know what they need. Your job as the incident commander is to get them the resources that they need. Once the people that can take care of themselves, now it leaves the emergency service to take care of people that can't take care of themselves. So in a nutshell, if you're doing a good job running an incident command, the community will calm down, they'll be happy, and they'll not be making noise. That's when you did a good job. But like what FEMA said, their response plans don't work here. But in an island, this is what they were asking. They want ideas. This is an island response plan. You take every single asset available on that island, because nobody's coming till the next day. All our disasters always happen at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when everybody's going home, and we ensue through the night. So the concept of using your assets, the people are your asset. They know more. They're all over the island. That is so powerful when you don't have technology. So now you add technology on to that. The other part of this whole incident is we have language barriers. What technology does for us, it helps us create maps that you bring in the local experts. You bring in another person from, say, for example, FEMA. If they try to speak across the table, they're not going to get their point across. But you put a map that was just created and what's happening, that is the language interpreter that you can actually devise a strategic plan for offense and defense. That's what I seen. That's being efficient. So for me, the Ahomoko, where it's at, I want them to have emergency response built in, because under the statement, they're there to help advise to take care of their land. Right now, the way we're going, and we are taking back our Hawaiian culture, this is huge. This will set global standards. And on an island, that's all assets. And that's the way we should look at it, to protect and prevent and move forward. Because we're going to need them to do all the prevention that this board and all the 47 points want to do. But currently, we need to upgrade our system to be ahead of the curve, because like Uncle said, had fire in Kula. I heard it on my radio. And it's irritating that our programs are not running. And for us, it's the state of Hawaii. It's harbors, airports, highways, and DLNR. I want a unmanned systems program that goes across the board. It covers all the state. Information is key to getting these things done.
Okay, thank you so
And
much.
with Uncle being in civil defense, I grew up under that, watching that tutelage. So that's why I'm adamant at what I do. And these are the things that we can add on. In legislation, it just makes more. But right now, if I sat in that seat, I bring in the moku. There's nothing in the book saying I cannot. It's just a smart way to do business.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, members.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you, members.
any other questions? Okay, so next steps, members, as we digest testimony that we received today, and you folks have also received online, please continue to email myself and Cherry Chiyama for the final steps. Members of the public, the final report will go live in December, on December 15th. I just want to alert you folks to the next steps. We have the environmental remediation group meeting today at 1 p.m. in room 309. The shelter working group, same as well today at 2:30 p.m. in room 329. And lastly, the jobs and business working group on November 21st, 2 p.m. in room 329. Members, please stand by. Thank you folks for joining us today as we get out. Mahalo.